And welcome to Cosi Talks Live. All right, we're going to give you guys a couple of minutes to jump on board. Looks like my text message did go through tonight, so I'm so excited. I'm finally getting the hang of that texting service that I am using to communicate with everybody. I'm going to go ahead and type in the phone number. So for those of you who are watching the replay, please continue to put replay in the comment section. I really appreciate when you guys do that. And also if you have any questions that you want me to take a look at, put them in the comment section and hit replay, and that will alert me to go back and look at it. Hey Harsh, how are you? I see a few of you popping on board. Don't be shy, guys. Let me know who you are, where you're from, and what's in your mug this evening. Hey Kathy, thank you for joining in. You're listening in from my YouTube channel. So guys, for those of you who perhaps aren't as fond of Facebook and have a hard time finding me on Facebook, I am on my YouTube channel, also under the name Cosi Talks, so it's pretty easy to find me there as well. Hey there, Alex. It's been a while since I've seen you on the show. Thank you for joining in. We've got Susan on board. All right, guys, wonderful. So for those of you watching the replay, okay, perhaps you missed the show or perhaps it was at a time when you're not able to watch the show. But if you would like to get text updates from me, you can text Cosi Talks to this number that I'm going to post right here. Sorry, typing this in. Haha. Okay, so text Cosi Talks just like that, all caps in one word to that particular number, and you can receive text messages for when I go live, and I include the links there. You can also send me your questions through the texting service, and that's something I'm really starting to learn and get a better grip on right there. But if you don't want to email me, you can text me directly there. Let's see, we've got Doug coming in from Dayton, Ohio. Marianne, oh, happy for a little warm weather. I know we had a cold blitz here, not as much as you, obviously. Hey there, Tom. Thank you for joining this evening. Let's see, we've got Rich from Texas. What part of Texas are you from, Rich? What's up with the colors? Colors, what are you referring to, Susan? Hey, we got Charlie coming in from New York. All right. We've got a lot of people from all sorts of different places this evening. So, guys, I'm really excited because before the show this afternoon, I had just a little bit of extra time. So I kind of went through some of the support groups and I saw some questions and I made some comments about questions and try to answer things a little bit. And a couple people said they would be joining us here for the first time this evening. So I'm so excited about that. We got Pastor Dave in the house this evening. Welcome. Good to have you on board, David. All right. So, guys, we've got a nice little crew going. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know Jim likes it when I get started on time. So cheers to you, Jim. Oh, Mission, Texas. Wonderful. Oh, okay. What's up with the colors for the new phone? We got Eric on board drinking his water, and we got Camille, our left above the knee amputee, coming in to join us. Thank you, Camille. Rio Grande Valley. Awesome. So, guys, those of you watching me for the first time this evening, welcome. My name is Cosi Belloso. I'm a physical therapist, amputee specialist here in Tampa, Florida. I've been a PT now for over 20 years. Oh, my goodness. And it is 5 years that I've been broadcasting this show to the limb loss community. So, thank you guys for all that support. We have a full page, and you can see my handwriting crisscrossing all over the place. Full page of questions this evening. So I'm so excited about this. Guys, those of you who are new to the show, don't be shy. Seriously, I love interacting with you. The show is for you. So if there's any questions that I can answer for you, even if I have a full page here in front of me, put your answers in there, or put your questions, excuse me, in the comment section, and I will answer them. So Kathy says, I just graduated from a 2-wheeled walker to the 4-wheel walker in physical therapy. And my physiotherapist said I no longer need physio because I did all the requirements to go out into the world. Congratulations, Kathy. I love hearing it, guys. I love hearing it when you're going to physical therapy. Oh my gosh, if there is one thing I can hope to do with this show is just kind of spread the awareness of the importance of the role of physical therapists and occupational therapists in the recovery process. And I know my occupational therapist is probably hiding in the audience somewhere. So Andrew, if you're out there, give me a shout out. We got David Donahue from South Carolina drinking his Coke. We got Thomas, a lot of Texans. Hey man, don't mess with Texas. I love my Texans. We got Daniel on board. There's Barbara. And we got Robin. Happy Wednesday to you as well, Robin. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in. I did have to go. I kind of went combing through some of the amputee support groups, and I was just kind of looking to see, okay, what are folks asking? What are folks asking? And I picked some of the questions from there. So one of the questions I got It was a young woman who said, "Yesterday, I believe I overdid it because today, when I went out and put my leg and stood up, the pain hit me so hard I fell back down on the bed. I tried getting back up and took a step, but oh my goodness, it started throbbing and burning so bad I had to sit back down." So the kind of context of this is the young woman is kind of obviously new to using a prosthetic device. Okay. So this one's definitely more for some of my new users out there. Okay. Yes, there is such a thing as overdoing it. More is not necessarily better when you're first learning to use your prosthetic device. I know whenever I have a new user with my clinic, I'm pretty strict about a wearing schedule. Getting your leg gradually used to wearing a prosthesis. Number one, your skin needs to get used to it, right? Number two, your muscles, everything is just kind of trying to get its footing back again. And you don't want to abuse your body because you're going to end up in a lot of pain or causing yourself an injury. Okay. Second thing I tell my new folks, pain is not okay. It's not a no pain, no gain scenario. Okay. And I'm former army brat, so you would think I would go for that, but no. Pain while wearing a prosthesis is no bueno. Okay. It either means that A, you overdid it, which is probably the case for this young lady, or B, there's something going on with that socket or the way the prosthetic fits. Okay. So for my new folks out there, pain, no bueno. Communicate with your prosthetist, give your physical therapist a call and have them help you work through it and troubleshoot what is causing your pain. What can you do to help it? What can you do to prevent it from happening again? Yes? Yes. Okay. Hey, let's do a quick Cosi poll. I haven't done a Cosi poll in a while. I want to know how many of you are less than 2 years out from your amputation? Can you guys put that into the comment section? That's my little attempt at market research. Hey, there's my Andrea. All right. Doug says, my wife is an occupational therapist, but I wish there were more physical therapists who knew more about amputees. Doug, your wife is a saint. And yes, I also do wish there were more PTs that knew more about amputees. And we are slowly starting to see some more folks interested in the field. We're starting to see more universities become proactive about educating their PT students and developing amputee programs. I'm so excited. I got invited to hopefully give a lecture at the University of St. Augustine sometime in the near future. So I'm so excited about that. But we're starting to see that come out just a little bit more. Hey there, compadre. Thanks for joining in. Sorry, I keep pressing all these buttons. Kenny says, just got back from La Hacienda and tuning in from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Well, thank you for coming in, Kenny. Hey there, Chuck. Glad you could be here. Daniel says, I know from firsthand experience, don't do much in the beginning. French roast for Rich. Yep, wearing schedule is very needed. So Rich is 2019, so he is almost 3, going on his 4 years out. Jenny is 7 months out. Camille is less than a year. Hey there, comadre. Who's been the longest amputee? Who's been the amputee for the longest? That's a good question, Daniel. All right, guys, start posting the years. Let's see who is our most veteran amputee. We've got Charlie in with 4 years. Doug is 1 year and 2 months out. Okay. Jill says almost a year and no working leg. Jill, by the way, I caught your question from the other evening. Let me go ahead and just grab it now. Okay, so Jill, I grabbed your question from last week. Okay. Jill says, why would my prosthetist make my right above the knee leg with a knee that when I sit down is longer than my real knee by 3 inches? Okay. And by the way, guys, if I have any prosthetists on board this evening, love it when you guys pitch in and help me with some of these alignment questions. Okay. So just again, Monday morning quarterback, Jill. So this happens a lot to some of my amputees, my above the knee amputees. When they sit down, one knee is sticking out further than the other. Okay, so there's a couple of different reasons. From a prosthetic standpoint, it could be that the alignment is just off, right? It could be that you have a longer limb. So, for example, my folks who are knee disarticulations, and you might be, Jill, I don't know, are you a knee disarticulation or are you a true above the knee amputee? Okay. And in which case, are you a longer above the knee amputee? Okay. If you have a longer residual limb as an above the knee amputee, the good news is you have a longer mechanical arm and lever, which will make it easier for you to operate that prosthetic knee. The news is sometimes that knee might stick out just a little bit more because you've got to allow for the prosthetic knee. So it just adds more length to that. Okay, Jill? So I don't know if you want to include that information for me. Now, in some cases, and this is an extreme case. It wouldn't cause as much of as 3 inches difference. But in some cases, and Line, comadre, if you're listening, feel free to help me out on this one. Sometimes the pelvis can rotate. Okay, so sometimes, let me see, where's Bob? My kids were in here playing, so I think Bob is over here on the ground somewhere. Okay, see if I can. Bob's pelvis is fused, so it doesn't move like a normal human pelvis. But in a human pelvis, guys, these bones are actually several bones put together. It's not just one big bone as it makes it look like here, right? So the os coxa, right? That's like the really fancy Latin name for your pelvic bones right here. They can actually rotate just a little bit, right? So if one of them is rotated a little bit too far back, okay, if I rotate it back, look at what happens to the leg, right? It sticks it out even more, right? So even in some folks who have both of their anatomical legs, just cop a squat there. All right, for those of us even who have two anatomical legs, if we have a slight rotation in one of the pelvic bones, right? It gives us an asymmetry and it makes our legs, one of our legs looks like it's sticking out more when we sit down, right? Boy, I dug that one out from the depths. That's like from early PT training, right? So there you go. But Jill, I would go ahead and just ask your prosthetist, ask them what was the reasoning for that. It could be that the particular knee that you're using creates a little bit of extra build into that height and that length. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a problem ambulating. Okay. I see it in the, like I said, our knee disarticulation patients. It's kind of like one of the disadvantages of being a knee disarticulation, but that is far outweighed by the benefits of having a longer lever arm when you're walking. Okay. So I hope that helps, Jill. All right. Let's see. Mhm. Susan says, I understand that one should not have pain, but sometimes amps have residual limbs that have a lot of nerve pain and it would be difficult to fit a prosthesis. Yes. And Susan, this is why I say to folks, pain no bueno. Okay. The next thing I say after that is if you're having pain, you need to find out what is causing that pain. And again, I know that sounds like, well, duh, Cosi, you need to find out the cause. But the reason is there are so many different things that could be causing pain in the residual limb of an amputee. And each one of those things has a different solution, right? You're not going to solve pain from a bone spur the same way you solve pain from an aroma, the same way you solve pain from just a little bit of scar tissue, right? Or a prosthetic fit. Right. So finding out what is the root cause of that nerve pain. And it all starts with having a conversation with your prosthetist and physical therapist. This is where we really get to shine, right? Just by the interview process, just by hearing my patient's history and physical, I can usually start to pinpoint, okay, I think this is what's causing their pain. And this is where we need to look and examine. Yeah. Okay. So Barbara's out 10 years, Susan's out 8 years, Tom is leading with 18 years. Daniel says, I had a revision and went to a theme park with 25 kids. 5 weeks later, walking. I didn't walk for a week after. Oh my gosh, Daniel, if I had to take 25 kids to a theme park, I wouldn't have been walking either, much less with a recent revision. Okay, so Jill, you are a right AK. Jill, again, without examining you, my 2 cents guess would be that you have a longer residual limb and the prosthetic knee that you're using is adding some length. So talk to your prosthetist about that and see if it's impacting your gait or is it mainly a cosmetic thing that you're looking at right there. All right. We got some hopping people tonight. We're good. Oh, you know what? Since we were talking about pain, let's lead to this next question right here. So Delcy asks, I've seen posts from other amputees that have had the TMR surgery, and they have said the recovery itself is brutal and that the amount of time before you can wear a prosthetic again can be months. My phantom limb pain, this is where I had to like write up the paper. My phantom limb pain is affecting my everyday life, but is it worth it? If we can't wear our prosthetic for a few months, it means we must go back to PT to rebuild our muscles. So, yes, on a lot of these things, Delcy, you're absolutely right. I am going to present a little bit of a caveat, right? Those of you who watched the show last year, right? I had TMR Nerve on the show. They were one of my sponsors last year, targeted muscle reinnervation. Okay. So, this is what happens when you try to talk a mile a minute. Targeted muscle reinnervation is a procedure that is done to help the pain being caused by a neuroma. Okay, so let's just take it back a couple of steps. What's a neuroma? When surgeon does an amputation, a traditional amputation, right? The nerve is pulled, cut, and tucked back into the soft tissue. That's like the really generic explanation of it. What happens is that nerve ending is flip flopping around in the soft tissue and it starts to heal, right? But it starts to heal with a bunch of scar tissue around it, right? And what happens is that nerve, right, is just kind of moving around and it can start to cause issues because it's not doing what it was designed to do, right? A nerve was designed to either provide sensation or to provide motor into the muscle unit, right? So if it's just moving around in free space in that soft tissue, devils or idle hands make devils work, right? So it can cause a lot of phantom pain. Okay. So about 20 years ago, two gentlemen, Dr. Kaiken, I always mispronounce his name, and please forgive me if you're listening, Dr. Kaiken, and Dr. Dumanian created this procedure, right, where basically they took that end of the nerve and they plugged it back into a certain place in the muscle itself. They would attach it, actually, to be more precise, into a nerve within the muscle, right? So they're taking two nerves, putting it back together. So they're giving that nerve ending something to do, making it happy and productive again, right? So it is a surgical procedure. Yes. Okay. And like any surgical procedure, there are risks associated with it. There is pain associated with it. Okay. So for those of you who feel like you have pain, phantom limb pain, that is possibly being caused by an aroma, okay, couple of questions I want to ask you. Is it affecting your daily function? Right? Is the nerve pain getting to the point where it's interfering with your quality of life? I have some folks who are walking around with neuromas. They get a zinger every once in a while and they're good to go, right? Or maybe they get a real exacerbation once every 6 months and they grin it, bear it, and deal with it. And then they can move on with their life. That's different from the other folks, right? Who have daily pain or that they cannot get a good prosthetic fit because that neuroma is just in the wrong place. Okay. And it's interfering with the quality of life. Okay. Because Delcy, you have an excellent point here. The recovery itself it's recovery from surgery. So yeah, it's going to require work and effort and it can be painful. Yes. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But I guess the question you have to ask yourself is, where do I want to be a year from now? Do I see myself tolerating this kind of pain a year from now and living my life? Or a year from now, could I potentially have decreased or maybe not even any pain if I go through this procedure and this process? So you have to ask yourself that question. You also need to go and talk to a surgeon who's done these procedures several times over. Okay. So this is the part where I'm going to put the website here, guys. And guys, there have been some folks that have come to my clinic or who have asked me, and I've done a history on them. And I go, you know what? Yeah, you have an aroma, but no, I don't think you necessarily might be a candidate for TMR and for the targeted muscle reinnervation, right? That being said, I always send them to a surgeon to get that second opinion and have that second evaluation done. I think for something as big as this, you want to get more than one opinion, right? As far as the recovery process, let me address that a little bit, and then we'll move on. The recovery process, as what Dr. Dumanian described it, is, yes, the first couple of days after your surgery, that nerve is basically like traumatized. And he says it actually kind of goes to sleep. Okay. So in some cases, his patients wake up and they have no pain whatsoever. And they're thinking, oh my goodness, wonderful, right? As time goes on, the nerve starts to wake up again, and it can actually wake up in a pretty cranky way. So it can actually cause a little more pain after surgery, right? And this is typically helped controlled with certain medications, right? So the doctors are monitoring you to say, okay, let's keep your pain, your post surgical pain under control, right? And then as the nerve heals, right, and it becomes integrated back into that muscle, the pain also decreases. And guys, go to my YouTube channel. I mean, honestly, some of the testimonies we've had from some of the folks that have come on my show, it's incredible. Even as a clinician, I'm like, wow, this is an amazing testimony that I hear from a patient who was a good candidate for TMR and it really changed his life. Okay. Several stories. So guys, if this is something you're thinking about, ask those questions, right? TMRnerve.com has a directory, has a physician directory. It's one of my favorite features of that website. It has a physician directory that by state, it lists the physicians and surgeons who perform targeted muscle reinnervation. Okay. So I encourage you, if you think this is something that you're thinking about, if this is something that's on your mind, go see one of these surgeons because number one, they obviously do the procedure. And number two, they can be the ones to accurately diagnose if this is in fact what is causing your pain. Yes? Okay. Mm, Birna, that's a very good question. Actually, Birna, I want to refer you. Let me see if I can hang on, guys. Sorry. I know I'm doing a lot of typing tonight. Uh, Okay. So, guys, my YouTube channel, I really need to kind of start pushing that out a little bit more because there's a ton of information on my YouTube channel, a ton of videos. My team's been working really hard. We've got a lot of great information on that video. Um, Okay. Sorry. So Birna asked, are there surgeons doing TMR in the original amputation surgery to prevent neuroma formation? Or is it mostly done afterwards when neuromas are already a problem? So yes and no, Birna. So now, 20 years later, right, some surgeons are starting to go, if we do targeted muscle reinnervation at the time of amputation, right, we're going to see better results. We're going to see possibly prevention of phantom limb pain altogether. The general research is showing that yes, the closer you are to your amputation when you do the TMR, the better chances of results, right? That being said, there have been some folks who are years out of their amputation, they have the TMR and they still see an improvement in their pain. Okay. So, guys, I'm not going to like sugarcoat it or tell you something that it's an absolute 100% proof. No. Okay. As far as, and I had a really interesting conversation with Dr. Jason Souza Birna, and he was on my show November 10th, November 10th of 2000 of last year. So just a couple of months ago, he was my Veterans Day tribute, right? So what I like about Dr. Souza is we talked a little bit more about which nerves are more prone to becoming troublesome neuromas, right? Because my question was, well, I've got a hammer, everything looks like a shiny new nail, right? So let's whap all these nerves that are floating around and put TMR on them. And he said, whoa, 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 that's not exactly how it works. He goes, the real true, way of doing TMR is there's select nerves. And don't quote me on this one, Birna. I want to say posterior tibial or the tibial nerve. I need to look that up again. But there are certain nerves that are more predisposed to forming these neuromas. And it's actually a posterior approach, meaning behind the knee, that they have to go and do these TMR procedures. So, Birna, once again, go to my YouTube channel, look up the video from November, it's either November 10th or November 11th. That episode right there with Dr. Jason Souza. And he talks about whether to do these procedures during the time of amputation and his experience with that. I will say this, guys. I am becoming much more proactive when I have someone come to me, whether someone local or one of you as my viewers, and you tell me I have an amputation coming up, like this is your first amputation or you're having a revision. All of my answers now say, talk to your surgeon about TMR. Have that conversation. Okay. Because if you're already going to be in on that operating table, you're already going to be opened up, right? Talk to your surgeon about TMR. And if your surgeon doesn't know about TMR, get a second opinion. The older I get, the more the filter just kind of comes off there. And I just speak my mind about those kind of things, right? I don't tell folks get TMR or don't get TMR, but I say, have that conversation with your surgeon. Yeah. Okay. Hey, Michelle. Let's see. We got Kenny here who's 3 years out as a left below the knee and looking forward to what lies ahead. I like your attitude. All right. Let's see. Hey, Sean. So Charlie says he had two neuromas form after TMR. And again, guys, what's interesting is not all neuromas are pesky, right? If you have a neuroma that forms on the motor nerve, so meaning, excuse me, it's a nerve that gives the muscle, it's a nerve that gives the signals to the muscle to make the muscle contract. That neuroma isn't painful. If it's a neuroma that forms on a sensory nerve, right? So this is a nerve that innervates part of the skin. That's when you'll start to see some of the fireworks, right? That's why I loved having them on the show last year because I learned so much as a clinician. It was amazing. Okay. So Susan says I was a 7-year amputee. So 7 years out, that's quite a bit of time when I had my TMR and it took away all the burning, stinging, and tingling. Okay. And it boils down to, guys, you know, be an informed consumer, right? So whether it's for your foot, your knee, a surgical procedure that's coming up, and we're going to be talking about other surgical procedure this year as well, right? Whatever it is, be an informed consumer. Ask those questions, right? It's your body. You want to make sure you're doing the right thing. And you also want to know that if you are getting yourself into a heavy duty procedure like targeted muscle reinnervation or osseointegration, which we're going to be discussing later this month, that you know all the pros and cons and that you've acknowledged that it is going to make your life better and that it's going to allow you to do certain things that you're not able to do at your current state. Okay. Hey there, Linda from New York. Uh, Camille says, I received TMR at the time of my amputation and I am so thankful. All right, Brennan, let me know what you think. Okay, so next question. Oh, this is a good one. This one came up, and I see this question happen a lot in the amputee support groups, and it kind of breaks my heart just a little bit because I can almost hear the frustration of the people who are writing these comments. And I always like to address it every once in a while because I know there's somebody new who's listening and needs to hear this. This person asks, how do you guys walk unassisted so quickly? I've been practicing almost daily for 2 months and I still can't walk unassisted. Any tips you have for me? Okay. And again, this individual is a relatively young individual when I saw the picture on the social media. So, guys, when it comes to walking unassisted, people really underestimate how much time and work and effort this takes, right? And they tend to beat themselves up. They say, well, I was walking prior to my amputation. I've been walking all my life. Why is it that I can't just put this leg on and walk? And why is it that I feel like everybody else around me in these support groups is saying that they just popped their leg on and started walking? Okay, guys, that's not how it works. And for the some few folks that said they popped their leg on and started walking, I congratulate them. But then I also see a lot of them coming back into my clinic because maybe they didn't learn how to walk with the right gait mechanics. Maybe they have a lot of gait deviations. Maybe they have a lot of balance issues. Okay, so these are things that maybe is not being shared in these response and these comments. Okay, and guys, 2 months, that's really not a lot of time. That really isn't a lot of time. And I've changed my viewpoint on this since I became a therapist 20 years ago. 20 years ago, yeah, I only got like 8 to 10 visits for my patients. So that's like 4 to 6 weeks for a below the knee amputee to teach them how to walk. Okay. I can pull a rabbit out of my hat if I have somebody who's very active and very skilled and that they had really good take. But guys, changes in muscle physiology, right? To see changes in strength in muscles, it takes 6 weeks before you see changes under the microscope, right? And everybody who undergoes an amputation is going to have some sort of residual weakness. They're going to have trauma that's been done to those muscles that have been cut, right? So 2 months is not going to necessarily be enough time. Even for my rock stars, right? 2 months, maybe I might have the occasional rock star that's walking unassisted, but we're still working on strengthening. We're still working on fine tuning that balance and coordination, right? We're still working on community ambulation, making sure they feel comfortable in the community, up and down stairs and ramps and streets. Okay. So for those of you who are still working on that and getting discouraged, please don't. Please don't get discouraged. The couple of things I can tell you is go see a physical therapist. Okay. Go see a physical therapist. And this is something that I will continue to advocate for on the show a lot. Those of you who are working with PTs and you feel like, oh my gosh, this is taking a long time. Why is this taking a long time? Express this to your PT. Talk to your PT about your frustrations about why you feel like it's taking you so long, right? I take it for granted in my head, in my clinical head, that I know that it's going to take my patient 3, 4 months to walk. But sometimes my patients need to smack me upside the head and say, Cosi, why is it taking me so long? And I have to sit down and explain to them, look, this is how far you've come. These are the building blocks we're putting together for you. And this is where you're headed, right? Communication, communication, communication. All right. And again, for me, again, some folks, right? Some folks may use a cane or a walker for their primary mode of mobility. Using a cane or walker for me is not necessarily a failure. Okay. And this is another thing I want to kind of get across. Depending on the individual, right? Usually when someone comes into my clinic and I do my interview and I do their physical examination and I do the evaluation, right? I can usually in my head go, you know what? I know that I can get the person to this point at least. right? A lot of it will depend upon what they were doing prior to amputation or in the years prior to coming to see me, right? I can realistically get them to this point, right? And for me as a physical therapist, my goal is to get them the most advanced level of independence as I possibly can. Sometimes that means that they will have to continue to use a cane or a walker. Okay. And this is not a decision I make lightly. This is a decision I make with my patient, right? Not for my patient, right? And I explain to them, let's get you to using the cane or the walker independently, because if this is what allows you to move around by yourself in the community, to be able to be left alone in your house, right? And to fend for yourself in your own home, right? Then I see that as a tool of independence. Okay. So sometimes we got to switch our little mindset off a little bit. Now, if I see someone who's on a cane or a walker and I'm like, girl, we got to get you off that cane or walker, right? Then that's where the physical therapy continues to move and say, okay, we've reached here with the cane or walker, but we can get you off of that. So this is what we need to do to get you there. Yes. Okay. Alex says it took 1 year of therapy, 4 days a week with physical therapy to learn and develop. And he has a left above the knee amputee. And guys, yes, the higher up your level of amputation, the more work it's going to take, right? Thank you, Michelle. Sean says, I absolutely hated being in a wheelchair. I was so depressed and angry and frustrated. So I pushed myself to wear my leg more than usual, but stayed on track with my progress. Yeah. Yeah. And again, guys, it's about setting those goals. When patients come to see me, I ask a ton of questions. Like, y'all know I love to talk. I talk even more with my patients, right? And I listen. Don't get me wrong. I listen a lot to what my patients have to say to me. I want to know, what are their goals? What are their goals? And then we talk about, okay, what was your life like prior to coming into my clinic? What was your life like prior to your amputation? How much activity were you doing? Right, and we start kind of going from there, and we start piecing together what's coming in from the medical history as well. Okay, I had one gentleman, he unfortunately passed away not too long ago because of his medical condition. Just got a hold of him, got the better of him. But he had not walked since his amputation 5 years prior, right? And, at first he comes into my clinic and I go, okay, let's think about the realistic goals that we can set for you. You have not walked since your amputation, right? You've lost a lot of mobility. Okay. So let's just set these small goals. And as we meet these goals, we'll set new ones, right? And just keep moving just a little bit further ahead, a little bit further ahead, a little bit further ahead. Okay. So this is how you kind of work, and it's a give and take. It's a give and take. And yeah, on occasion I've had to, and it breaks my heart when I have to do this. There's been the occasional patient that they say, I want to walk completely by myself without a cane or a walker, and it's not physically realistic. It's just not going to be possible. Okay. And it's really hard. It's not very often where I get to that case, because usually people can tell for themselves, like, okay, I'm probably going to end up having to use a cane or a walker or crutches. And they come to that realization on their own. But there's some folks that they need to be explained, right? But again, I always tell people, this is how far I know I can get you. So let's get you to that point. And then from there, we can decide if you can go further or if we just make you as strong as possible at that point. Okay. And again, it's about quality of life, guys. It's about getting back to your lives. And if that sometimes involves a cane, a walker, or a crutches, in some cases, wheelchair for partial mobility during the daytime, right? It's what's going to give you that independence, right? Tom, I know I would have loved to have you for a patient. And one of these days, you and I are going to go for a run and you're going to kick my butt in that run. Robert, my practice is actually a mobile practice. So I don't have a brick and mortar clinic of my own with my name on it. A lot of people are like, what? And I'm like, yeah. So the way I design my practice is I travel around. So depending on where my patients are, I go to my patients. So sometimes that means I go work with them at their prosthetist clinic. Sometimes that means that I do work with them with one of my partner physical therapy clinics that I have in the area. Okay. So it just all depends on my patient and their needs. Let's see. Susan says, I wear a sleeve elevated vacuum and tried to go with the sleeveless socket, but my knee was all wobbly because of years of wearing the sleeve. So I went back to the sleeve. Right. And if you're going to have a change like that, Susan, yeah, you're going to lose perhaps a little bit of that stability in the knee. So again, is it something that you can do some extra strengthening exercises where you're strengthening, like squats for me? Love squats, because you're strengthening not just the quads, the hamstrings, and the glutes. You're also pulling in those residual calf muscle fibers, right, to get them to fire up a little bit as well. Okay, I'm talking a lot. There was one question here I really wanted to do. This one. Okay. So this one kind of goes along with the question of how to get off a cane or walker and walking unassisted, right? So this gentleman says, so Thursday I got my finalized prosthetic. It's the Freedom Quattro, really cool MPK, and I can now walk and chew gum. I couldn't with my free swinging or hydraulic knees. I've been an amputee for 4 months and I still lean to the right. Any advice or comments would appreciate it. And this gentleman posted a video, young man posted a video of his walking. I'm going to try to kind of recreate what he was doing to kind of give you guys an idea. Okay, so he said on the right side is his prosthetic side, right? And as he would walk to the right side, he's doing leaning to the right. Now I'm kind of exaggerating the movement. So when he was doing it, he was kind of like this, right? So a little bit of a trunk leaning over, right? And going over, right? So this happens a lot. This is probably one of the most common gait deviations that I will see in an amputee. And this is both for mainly usually for my above the knee, but also in my below the knee. And there's a couple of different things that could be causing this, right? So from a prosthetic standpoint, if the prosthetic leg is too short, sorry, gears in my head trying to work. It's been a long day with 4 kids, right? So if the prosthetic side is too short, right, then they're going to have to lean over to clear the sound limb to give it room to move. Otherwise, they're going to stub their toe, right? So that's a prosthetic possible thing. It could also be that the person sunk too much into their prosthesis, making it feel shorter, right? So they might need to add some socks in to elevate them more in that socket, okay? From a human standpoint, right? Because sometimes when it comes to these gait deviations, guys, you got to look at two things. You got to look, is it coming from the human or is it coming from the prosthesis, right? The PT is going to tell you it's coming from the human. The prosthetist is going to tell you it's coming from the prosthesis. That's why it's also nice to have 2 pairs of eyes looking at it, right? Okay, so from the human standpoint, biggest culprit, drum roll, and my old timers here should know this, glutes, right? So when we put our weight onto our leg, especially if we're using a prosthesis, if this is my prosthetic side, and I put my weight into it, if my glutes back here, right, and then they kind of curve around a little bit here, if they're not nice and tight, right, I'm just going to kind of cave into it, right? Or I'm going to drop on the other side, right? So if this is not nice and stable, it's not going to stay nice and straight to allow my other leg to move through, okay? So if the glutes are not nice and tight and strong, you're going to have some of these gait deviations, right? Especially with that trunk lean, right? So the reason for this is because you're missing muscle length, right? So if you're below the knee, you're missing some of your calf muscles. If you're in above the knee, you're missing all the calf muscles and potentially some of your thigh muscles, right? So your glutes have to pick up the slack and they have to be extra, extra strong. And this is what happens a lot. And this is one of my like soapboxes, right? In my young bucks, right? My young men, and this particular individual is is a young man, right? What'll happen is they have their injury, they go get a prosthesis, and somebody will tell them, you're fine, you're young, you're strong, you don't need physical therapy, just keep practicing. Can't tell you how much I love it when I hear that, right? Right? That happens all the time, right? And I get stories about, well, I was young and I just put my leg on and I walked and I just kept walking. You know, I was able to get through all my day and all my activities, da 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 da. But then years down the line, right, they start developing chronic injuries. Or, like in the case of one of my buddies, he couldn't figure out why he couldn't run, right? Young guy in shape, and he just couldn't figure out why he couldn't run. Okay. And the reason is because when you have an injury, okay, whether it's surgery, injury from trauma, injury from amputation, right, your muscles get real lazy, right? And your brain decides only to use a certain amount of muscle fibers, right? It doesn't want to recruit all of those muscle fibers. That just takes way too much effort. So in these young guys and sometimes young women, they can get away with it because they have so many nice, big, juicy muscle fibers that even if their brain only recruits some of them, it'll be just enough to get them walking and get them through their day and get them through what they need to do, right? But eventually it catches up to them, right? Eventually not being able to use all those muscle fibers, not rehabilitating those muscle fibers is going to catch up with them in the long run at some point. At some point. Yeah. Okay. Mm, Robert, you're in Pinellas Park. That's not too far away. Phil, I would love to go to Saskatchewan, but plane tickets are really expensive. Yeah, really expensive. Let's see. Sean says, before my accident, I was super active. I played professional arena football living in Florida. You're always doing outdoor activities. I used to love to run. After my accident, once I got my blade, I would run. The last time I ran was the river run in 2020 with Hanger sponsored me. Before this particular run, I haven't ran in 5 years. My socket is too big now, and you have to put lotion on it, etc. And I want to start back running. Okay, so Sean, I love teaching people how to run. It's kind of one of my like the cherry topping on my physical therapy Sunday right there. When it comes to running, and this is for folks who have excuse me, two anatomical legs or prosthetic legs, okay? You need to be strong. Running is a brutal sport on the human body. You're putting 8 to 10 times your body weight on your joints when you run. And I'm a runner, guys. I love to run, but it's a brutal sport on the human body and you have to upkeep things, okay? So if you want to get back into running, right? Even if you're and for me I consider recreational running to be about a couple of miles a day. Even if you're just doing a couple of miles a day, guys, you need to get the strengthening program behind it, right? You need to have someone just take a look at your running mechanics, make sure there's nothing in there that's possibly causing a deviation that could then cause problems down the line. Okay. To me, the way I see it is a little investment in that in the beginning can save you down the line, right? I tell my kids, I want to be the 90-year-old lady who's still able to finish a 5K, even if I'm the last one to finish, right? I don't necessarily need to be the one who finishes first at this age. So I'm not going to beat my body to a pulp. I'm going to take care of my body. I'm going to do the strengthening exercises that even I don't like to do, right? But I know I got to do them, right? So when it comes to getting back into running, look at these things. Look at these things. And the cool thing is there's a lot of running physical therapists, physical therapists who specialize in runners, right? So if you already had the mechanics of running there, Sean, even if you find a PT who doesn't necessarily have a lot of experience with amputees, but they're experienced with treating runners, that might be a good relationship for you to have right there. Okay. Hey guys, feel free to reach out to me with questions about your running. Like I said, I love teaching my patients how to run. Love if they're candidates for it. Daniel says, I was told I walked okay with my prosthetic and I learned to walk a few times. I didn't need PT. It was a year later when my back hurt before I went. Yeah. Yeah. And guys, here's the thing. Here's what totally like kills me, right? If someone has their ACL repaired, like if they tear their ACL, their anterior collateral ligament, right? What's the first thing they tell you to do? Go to see a physical therapist. What's the first thing they tell you to do after you've had a meniscal repair in your knee? Go see a physical therapist, right? Okay, let's cut your leg off. You don't need PT. Really? Can someone please explain this to me? Okay. Whenever somebody tries to justify to me why they don't think their patient needs physical therapy, I just kind of look at them like this. Mhm. Okay. And I'll ask them, if your patient fractured their femur, would you send them to a PT? Oh, yes, of course. If your patient had a rotator cuff repair, would you send them to physical therapy? Oh, yes, of course. So your patient had their leg cut off. And you don't think they need physical therapy? Okay, I'm going to move on. All right. Let's see. Yeah. I know Sean's laughing at me right now. I know sometimes like the sarcastic Cosi comes out and I try to keep her tucked in a little bit, not so I don't scare people, but every once in a while she comes out. All right. Here's another one. So this one is actually a pediatric patient. One of the moms posted a picture of her daughter and said, hi, can anyone tell me if they had a leg that was strapped on around the waist? This is my daughter's first leg and she's struggling with it and it's very bulky, right? So in this picture, you have this beautiful little girl and she's an above the knee amputee and she's wearing a suspension sleeve that goes around her waist. And because she's small, because she's, a little girl, it looks like it's kind of, around her entire trunk and it's taken up quite a bit of space. And yeah, it does look a little bit cumbersome and bulky. right? So thankfully there was a prosthetist who jumped in and gave some really nice answers there. Okay, so I do hear this a lot, and especially with my patients in Florida, where they're just like, "Oh my gosh, why do I have to wear a sleeve? Why do I have to wear this suspension belt around my waist?" Okay, so again, it's about suspension, meaning how is that socket being held onto your limb? Okay, and there's several different options. I've done a suspension show. It's also on my YouTube channel about all the different kinds of suspension that are out there. Okay, so the good news is there's more than one option when it comes to suspension. When it comes to the pediatric patient, guys, kids grow. And oh my gosh, they grow fast. I have 4 kids of my own, and I can hardly keep shoes on them and pants on my young little boys because they're just like shooting up constantly, right? So imagine how much a child's growth affects how their socket will fit, right? I can only imagine these moms are just revolving doors bringing their children in. So, to extend the life of the socket just a little bit more and to give the child a little bit more mobility, they want to give them a little extra stability with that suspension sleeve, right? Because that suspension sleeve, it's gonna hang on, especially with a lot of these kids, some of these kids who have the osteosarcoma, so they have potentially very short residual limbs. Okay, so to keep that leg on so that the child can be as active as possible, unfortunately, is sometimes a necessary evil. Now, other suspension systems that I would suggest to have a conversation with the prosthetist would be the lanyard system, okay, which is the one where you just pull the strap and it pulls you in, the pin lock system. And again, these are questions you want to have a conversation with the prosthetist to see, okay, what are the options here? The good news is eventually kids stop growing, right, when they reach adult age. And at that point, once the growth has stabilized, the child will have a few more options in terms of how they can have the suspension on and the stability within their socket. Yeah. I don't often get pediatric questions, so it's kind of nice to address that every once in a while. All right. Hang on. There was more questions here. Hmm. Sorry, I'm like reading through all my crisscross handwriting here. David says, I've casted a refit. I've been cast for a refit on my socket. Okay. And the residual limb has lost so much mass, it's concerning to me. Okay. Guys, when it comes to the residual limb, there's going to be a lot of muscle shrinking. It's part of what's going to happen, okay? And when I was a younger PT, I was like, "No, we can strengthen these muscles and prevent the muscle loss from happening." And yeah, it doesn't. Okay. And it's pretty daunting, for newer amputees to see their leg just completely shrink down, especially in those first 2 years, right? And for many people, right, it keeps remodeling for the rest of the life, right? And the way I see it is our bodies are dynamic. Our bodies are not meant to stay the same. They age one day to the next, no matter how much we try to prevent it, right? So your residual limb is going to be constantly changing. The changes will, slowly plateau and not be quite as dramatic later on in your life, but there will be changes. Ronnie Dixon's been on my show several times, and he's going to be on my show again this year. He's an above the knee amputee. He had his amputation when he was 17 or 18, and he's now in his mid to late 30s. He's still experiencing changes in his residual limb, right? So that's a very normal thing. Now, the second question I get related to that is, can I prevent this from happening? Okay. And the answer is no. Okay. Our muscles were designed, to be a certain length. Our muscles were designed to attach in a certain way to a certain part of our body. Okay. It's a lever arm. Okay, think back in your high school physics class, right? You have those lever arms, right? So what happens when you cut a lever arm? The efficiency has been compromised, right? Shorter lever arm means shorter amount of power, less power that you can put into it, less contraction can occur, right? And then on top of that, right, these muscles are sometimes reattached at a different angle. They're reattached to a different way. Sometimes they're reattached to another muscle, right? So they're being attached in a way that they were not meant to be attached. The surgeon's just trying to do their best, right, to accommodate all that soft tissue and create a nice looking shape to that residual limb, right? So those muscles are not functioning the same way. So they're not going to be able to recruit as much as they were prior to the amputation. And that's why you start to see the muscle atrophy. It's a use it or lose it scenario. right? So is that a hopeless case? No, 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 no. A lot of people are just like, but it's okay. Okay. So especially with my below the knee, they tend to really be worried about, with the residual length left, how can they a lot of folks try to focus on how can I work out these calf muscles that are left? And I go, don't focus on working the calf muscles. Focus on working the thigh muscles and the butt muscles, right? I can promise you, any exercise that you're doing to work all of these muscles up here, it's going to start pulling on some of the muscle fibers from down there. Okay. Don't worry so much about trying to focus on these muscles. Focus more on the muscles above it. And for my above the knee amputees, same thing. Focus on the gluteal muscles, focus on the trunk muscles. Okay. My favorite example of this is a squat. I love teaching my patients how to do squats. And this accounts for both my above the knee and my below the knee patients. It's in my book, right, on how to do it. Now, when you're doing a squat, you're engaging these big muscles. You're engaging the glutes, you're engaging the hamstrings, the quads, and you're also engaging the lower leg muscles, right? So if you focus on doing the muscles above, you're going to engage whatever you can from the muscles below, right? Now, do I have exceptions to this rule? Yes. My folks who are incredibly long below the knee, some folks who are close to being a Symes amputation, right? We can focus a little bit more on individually activating those muscles because they have a longer muscle lever. Okay. Sounds good? Thank you for that segue, Sean. You just gave me a really beautiful segue. It's a shameless plug, but I'm going to do it. So, guys, those of you who are not yet familiar with my Strong Body program, I just posted the website right there. So if you go to that website, you're going to find that you can go and be a part of a subscription program that gives you over 150 video exercises for above the knee and below the knee amputees, head to toe for legs, arms, core, balance, and flexibility. So exercises for all of that. And it's exercises for my beginners, intermediate, and advanced athletes, right? Something in there for everybody. Then I have a nifty book, two books actually, one for my below the knee and one for my above the knee, and full color pictures with descriptions on all the exercises that you find in those videos. So the best way for this program is to have the subscription and to also have a book, because there's so much description, so much information that I've put into these videos and into the books on strengthening, mechanics, proper form, how to progress yourself as you're getting stronger. Lots and lots of information packed into that. All right. So show me some love, hit up that website and let me know what you think. All right. I'm looking through. I think I've gotten everybody's. Did I do it? Ooh, this one. This one. Hang on, Rich. I'm not done yet. All right, this one. This person says, I've been cleaning my liner with soap and water. The socket and liner smells like the inside of a men's locker room. Ooh. What does everyone do? I have a suction and pin lock liner. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate that. So guys, I love to talk about skincare and hygiene and liner hygiene. I think it's incredibly important, incredibly important. So just as a quick note, when folks first come into my clinic and they're just like, why is she talking so much about keeping our skin clean, about liner clean? And like, I know how to take a shower. Okay. Our skin was meant to be open to air, right? Even if you're wearing a pair of pants, there is air between your pants and your skin, unless you're wearing really super tight pants, right? Some people do. Okay. But your skin is mainly meant to breathe all day. So when you put on a liner and a socket, it's like the equivalent of tying a garbage bag onto your leg and wearing it all day long, right? That's going to change a lot of things on your skin. It's going to abuse your skin, potentially, sweat, odor, bacteria, all that kind of stuff. And then your skin can undergo some of these changes because, again, liner stuck right on the skin, right? So when it comes to skincare, I've really learned over the years what works and what doesn't work. A couple of years ago, I partnered up with this company called Vital Fit, right? They, as far as I know, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, as far as I understand, they are the only product line on the market right now with skincare designed for the amputee. Right. And yes, I do put a difference there. There's a lot of great skincare products on the market, but not necessarily those that have been tested to wear with a prosthetic device. Okay. So way back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and I was first starting out as a PT, I used to recommend, cocoa butter for my patients because it was really great for when I worked with burn patients. It was really great for sensitive skin, wonderful hydration, right? But it didn't necessarily work well with a patient wearing a liner and a socket, right? The patient would start to sweat and it's like an oil slick, right? Same thing with Cetaphil and Aquaphor. These products that are out there on the market that are great for skin, but not necessarily with skin that's wearing a liner and a prosthesis and socks and suspension sleeves on top, right? Because the skin starts to sweat. All right. So I really like this product line because it was made for that. Okay. And they've got a cleanser, moisturizer, liquid to powder lotion, and night moisturizer. Another product, and we're going to have these folks on the show this year to come talk about it. Another product that has really been like getting my attention a lot is the liner wand. And I don't have a kit here with me that I can show you. I'm going to have to grab one. So the liner wand is a product. It's made out of it's like an apocrine is the material that is used, but basically it's a coating that you put on the liner itself. Right. This stuff is meant to be for your skin. The liner wand is meant is I don't want to call it a liquid. It's coats your liner. So every 2 weeks, you coat your liner with it. It kills the bacteria, it pulls out all the yucky stuff from your liner, but it also provides a protective coating on your liner, right? And the people that I've talked to who use this say it's been a game changer in terms of odor and bacteria and sweat and smell. Okay. And I know that that's something that my patients sometimes come to my clinic and they're very self conscious about that. I live in Florida. It's humid, it's hot and sticky. So again, when it comes to skin and liner hygiene, this is something that I really, really talk about a lot with my folks. So go ahead, Vital Fit for the skin care, and then the liner wand for the liner. And I know that they also have a cleanser. Okay. So those are the 2 products that I've had a chance to get to know those products. I've had a chance to work with the team. I've had a chance to just see it on folks and get a lot of feedback over the past couple of years about these 2 products and seeing some really, really nice results with that. Right. The liner wand, it's one of those things that when I first saw it, I'm just like, what am I looking at here? But I just called their team up and I was like, hey, tell me about your product. What's the deal here? And I started talking to, thank you, Harsh, for putting that on there. Thank you, Harsh. I do have a discount code for Vital Fit, guys. So you can get, if you put COSI 10, you get like, I think $10 off any purchase of $20 or more. So it's a really nice little discount. Okay. With the liner wand, again, it's one of those things that I'm starting to hear a whole lot more about it. Athletes, and that's a big one for me because athletes sweat like gangbusters, right? So to have something on there that extends the life of your liner, right? It prevents the sweat and odor and bacteria, and folks are really responding well to it, and their skin gets my attention. Let's see. Denise says, I use Vital Fit for cleaning my limb and cleaning my liner. I switched to suction suspension, so now I have a sleeve to clean. I use Vital there. I bought deodorant from amputee store that I spray on my residual limb and up my thigh where the sleeve covers. No odor at all. I wash liners and sleeve religiously each day. Bravo. Bravo. And I tell my patients that you should have 2 liners, one that's being washed and drying and one that you're wearing. Okay. Your liner needs to be washed once every 24 hours. Sorry. I don't budge on that one. Your liner needs to be washed once every 24 hours. Okay. And the easiest thing is I tell folks when you get into that shower or when you get into your bathtub, take your liner in with you, take it off, clean it with whatever cleaning product you use. And again, I'm a huge fan of the Vital Fit or the Liner Wand cleanser, right? Wash it, wash it, wash it, wash it, wash it. Rinse it, rinse it, rinse it. And when you think you're done, you rinse it again with as warm water as you possibly can to get all that soapy residue out. Yes? And I've done lots of shows on this. So, guys, go to my YouTube channel, check out those shows. There's like, I don't know how, probably I have more shows on skin and liner hygiene than any other topic related to amputee. Okay. All right, guys, I have talked myself dry. This has been a really great show for tonight. Thank you guys so much for all the questions. Guys, as always, don't be shy. Tag me in your posts. If you see that there's a question in one of your support groups that you're like, hey, this is a good question for Cosi to answer, go ahead and tag me. I love it when you guys do that because that helps me get to the person that really could use a little bit of help. Um, go check out my YouTube channel, like I mentioned. And that's about all the news for tonight. Ooh, February 22nd. Integrum is coming on my show. We're going to be talking all about their Oprah system, which is a bone anchored prosthesis using osseointegration. So it's basically using osseointegration to provide a prosthetic fit. And I cannot wait for you guys to hear it. We have so much information in that show, like lots of information. So, guys, we will see you on that evening. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop talking at this point, and I'm going to go sleep. Okay, guys, as always, thank you for letting me be a part of your lives this evening, and I will see you next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. God bless.